Shalom, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Eli Bialik from Nefesh B'Nefesh, and we're here to introduce you to the community of Jerusalem, the city of Jerusalem, with many, many communities there. I myself personally have made Aliyah 25 years ago as a single. I live in Israel, and I am fortunate to have assisted over 6,000 people make Aliyah over the last 10 years of my work at Nefesh B'Nefesh. I am the community advisor at Nefesh B'Nefesh, and I would just like to briefly introduce Nefesh B'Nefesh as the organization that is here to promote and facilitate Aliyah. We provide Aliyah resources, and we work in conjunction with the Jewish Agency for Israel that approves those for Aliyah under the law of return. At this point in time, I want to welcome my friends from the Reshut HaKlita Ironit Yerushalayim, from the Jerusalem Aliyah and Klita Department, from the Jerusalem Municipality. We have Yisrael Cohen, who is the project director for Olim from English-speaking countries. Welcome, Yisrael.
Shalom uvracha.
And I'd also like to welcome Yaakov Berger, the Ole coordinator for Olim from English-speaking countries.
Welcome.
So why don't you please introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do at the Jerusalem Klita and Aliyah Department of the Jerusalem Municipality.
Sure. Well, my name's Yisrael Cohen. I come from, I'm not from North America. I don't know if you can tell. I come from London, not from one of the colonies. And we made Aliyah. I made Aliyah with my wife about 20 years ago. And we've been living in Jerusalem for almost all the time all of our kids grew up here in Jerusalem. And I've been working for the last 3 years for the Aliyah department of the Jerusalem municipality, which is just incredible that there is a department in the municipalities whose job it is to assist new Olim integrate into this incredible city. We work to guide Olim through the bureaucracy, understanding your Aliyah rights and benefits, guidance through the process. We help you choose the right neighborhood. Jerusalem's a huge place. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Help people register for schools, employment opportunities, ulpan, culture, volunteering. Really help Olim that have chosen Jerusalem as their destination to settle in the smoothest possible way.
Thank you, Yisrael. And Yaakov, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Yaakov Berger. I also am in the Aliyah department together with Yisrael. I specialize in helping new Olim find employment opportunities and transitioning their careers from where they're coming from, North America, to Israel. And as we'll talk about later on, there's a series of built-in systems within the Jerusalem municipality to help people, all sorts of people, find with employment. And there's specifically programs catered to Olim, also, in English as well. We'll discuss that when we get to the employment section.
Great, thank you, Yaakov. So what I wanted to say to our webinar participants, don't fret, we will share our contact information with you and the relevant links later on. So please don't worry about writing down and remembering our contact information. The format of the discussion today is going to be some short presentations on the topics of community, vis-a-vis living in Yerushalayim, employment, education for children. And then after that, we're going to open up the floor for some questions and answers. So, the issue of community, it's always a significant question. What do I need to do? Do I need first to find the community, or do I need to find a job first? At Nefesh B'Nefesh, we've always felt that the most important thing is that first find a community that you feel comfortable in, because jobs can come and go, but you really want to feel at home where you live. So without taking up any more time, Yisrael, please introduce us to the topic of community in Jerusalem?
Sure. Well, Jerusalem is a very big city. It's the largest city in Israel. I think it's important to understand when you make Aliyah to Jerusalem, really, you're not making Aliyah to the city, you make Aliyah to a neighborhood in Jerusalem. And when you come as a tourist to visit Jerusalem, you have one sort of experience of the city. But when you choose to come to live in Israel, when Jerusalem becomes your home, so your relationship to the city is entirely different. What you're looking for is also very different. There's a wide variety of different types of neighborhoods in Jerusalem. Some people are familiar with the city center and they choose a neighborhood like Nachlaot or Rechavia. Those are more expensive neighborhoods, but you've got the bustling city center. And there are other people that choose to go into the suburbs of Jerusalem to some of the quieter neighborhoods, which are popular for others. In addition to Yaakov and myself that work with people choosing a neighborhood in Jerusalem, there are around the city many, I think there are a total of 26 community centers inside the city. Within the 26 community centers spread out all over the city, 18 of the 26 have Olim coordinators inside that community center within the neighborhood. So therefore, when people choose a neighborhood, you have built into your local neighborhood, you have an Olim coordinator that can help you settle in. Now, everybody is looking for something else when they choose a community. I live in Katamon. We've been living in Katamon for the last 18 years. It's a really fantastic neighborhood. Many young families live in our neighborhood. Just on my street, on where we live, there are 4 ganim within about 4 kindergartens within about a 3-minute walk of our home. But I want to share something about a couple of other neighborhoods that might be of interest to you. I don't know if people are familiar with French Hill. French Hill, I visited. I hadn't been there for ages. I was there about a month ago. It's a beautiful neighborhood in North Jerusalem, and a new school has just opened up there to cater specifically, actually, to the young families that are coming into the neighborhood. Many Olim, the head teachers and English speaker, it's become a very popular, so things go in trend. There's sort of a trend that French Hill has become a very popular neighborhood recently. I'm happy to tell you more about that if you wish. Another very popular neighborhood in Jerusalem is Ramot. Ramot, people used to say about Ramot that Ramot is remote because it's far away in North Jerusalem, but actually it's a very popular neighborhood, especially with North Americans have really in the last 5-10 years have moved there in large numbers, and the numbers seem to be increasing. Many excellent resources in that neighborhood for people. These neighborhoods, French Hill, Ramot, are not the sorts of neighborhoods that you would pop into, if you were touring. But if you come to see the city, to live here, they are beautiful residential suburbs. Of course, those are 2 of the neighborhoods with Olim coordinators. There are 16 other neighborhoods. I'm happy to talk about them. Josh, who is behind the scenes, just sent a very useful link in the chat that I encourage you all to look at. It's a fantastic resource from the Jerusalem municipality. It's a map of the city. First of all, it's always useful, at least for me, to see a map of the city, to know where your neighborhood is compared to other neighborhoods. And within this map, you can choose what you're looking for. If you're looking for public parks, you can click on public parks on this map and it'll show you all the public parks. So you can see within your neighborhood if they're parks. You want to know where the pharmacies are. If you want to know where a whole load of resources are in the city, you can click on it, and then based on what your personal needs are, you can find a community for you. Some communities in Jerusalem are homogeneous, more homogeneous. A certain type of person lives in the community, but most of the communities in Jerusalem are more varied, with a wide variety of ages and religious affiliation. living together in the same community.
Great. So thank you very much, Yisrael. Um, how can somebody further their research regarding community options in Jerusalem? How might they go about that?
Well, the map is a very useful link. What I would recommend, if you'd like, Yaakov and I are available to talk about neighborhoods in Jerusalem. We have a chart that we use, what I like to use, and it has a list of about 15 different, different things that somebody might be looking for: educational facilities, public transport, green space, religious provisions. A list of 15 different sort of items that people would look for. We share that with potential olim, and you share with us 3 or 4 of those that interest you, and then we suggest 2 or 3 neighborhoods that you'd be interested in, and then we can put you in touch with people who live in those neighborhoods to see if it's a good fit for you. So we'd be happy to provide that service by be in touch with us afterwards, and we can arrange that. Greatest pleasure in the world. And excellent. I mean that.
Thank you very much, Yisrael. Thank you very much for the offer. And now I'd like if Yaakov could share with us a little bit about the employment scene. How does that work?
Yes, as Yisrael said, we talked about Jerusalem as the tourist destination versus Jerusalem, the practical, we call it. One of the first differences, you're not on vacation, you're going to be looking for a job and providing. So again, a totally different view on Jerusalem. To begin with, you have to just remember the whole concept of Aliyah. It's a big career transition. It's a life transition on a number of levels. Career is right at the center of that. So first, just to sort of understand the challenges that are presented with Aliyah, which are also opportunities. We have the language. The primary language in Israel is Hebrew. You can, in fact, find English-speaking jobs. You could begin searching in English before you learn Hebrew, but Hebrew is going to be a big key to opening up many, many doors. It's the language of the land, and even if you speak some Hebrew, learning the Hebrew that's used in work, the lingo, your professional jargon in Hebrew, it's a new game that will take some adjustment time, and that goes hand in hand with a cultural adjustment. Each field, each profession has, within North America, even from city to city, and within, for sure, between professional fields, there's a huge variant on just being in touch with the professional culture and Israeli culture in general. Nothing's like it. I can say that wholeheartedly. Nothing is like it, and it takes time to get to sort of tune in and to sort of become one with the culture. And the third is creating a new network of connections. You might have some friends who made Aliyah before you. You might have family members here. You might have even had some business here. But again, it's for someone who's coming with a professional career already, in a later stage, where they're already developed and they've really accomplished a lot of things. It means they're going to sort of go back to that stage where they're making new connections again, as opposed to relying on all the old connections. The good news is these are all very common barriers that are commonly overcome. In fact, that they're really sort of they're really invitations to grow, to create new connections, to sort of have, to make a new business here. It's an opportunity to start over again in a way.
Okay, Yaakov, I'd like to ask you. We're speaking to potential olim who have families, who currently have careers. It's a big leap of faith to move to a new country and not to have a job. That's a little bit scary. How can we manage that?
100%. It's definitely, it's scary, and it's a leap of faith, and that's why Aliyah needs to be planned carefully. That means starting the job search before you come, even though you can't necessarily land a job before you arrive. It happens, but it's very rare. But to already sort of do what you can beforehand, it means doing the research if you have a specific career that you're going to want to follow up on. If you're an architect or a lawyer or an accountant or a doctor, something that needs some sort of legal recognition, do the research. Nefesh B'Nefesh has an amazing resource on their website called the Profession Index, if I recall. There they give the rundown of what it takes to transition your credentials to Israel, which offices to be in touch with, around how long it takes. That means that your job for that those first maybe up to a year that you're here might just be transferring credentials. Meaning you might either need to find a way to make money on the side while you're working on your credentials, or to have planned to be able to live off of savings for that period of time. But it's entirely possible. We also, in Jerusalem, we recently brought an amazing program called Vahim. They already have on their website, if you search Vahim, there's something called Aliyah Prep. It's a series of webinars totally free that helps people sort of learn about the Israeli job market, sort of prepare themselves for what they're going to need to know in terms of getting their CV in order and whatever the different things, and begin networking. Those are the starting steps. They have a follow-up program as well, and it's like a club membership. They, in addition to all the workshops, which have now gone on from live to live on the computer, they've all moved to virtual, but they have sort of job hunting workshops. They teach about the Israeli job culture, how to write a CV here into Hebrew if necessary. They provide mentors. They sort of follow you up on the job search, and a lifelong membership where people can go back and seek guidance. They will actually send the CV in for people, which sort of goes to just sort of segue back into what makes the job market different here. It's important to have connections, and that means starting to, right now from where you are as you're planning your aliyah, to start leveraging the connections you might have, finding where they are, understanding what skills you have that might sort of be transitional, you'll be able to transition to a different career path. But it's a lot of moving parts, and it takes a lot of dedication, and it's entirely possible. We have dozens of success stories. Every day you witness them from where we sit.
Yeah, what I'd also like to add is that on the Nefesh B'Nefesh website, we have a job board, which you can find many new jobs listed there every single week, and you can search by geographic location. So that's also an important resource. And if you have questions, or you would like to continue the employment discussion with Nefesh B'Nefesh, please feel free to reach out to employment@nbn.org.il. So Yaakov, I wanted to thank you very much for introducing the topic of employment to us. You know what, one last quick question about employment in Jerusalem. Where would you say are the hubs geographically in Jerusalem? Where do most people work in Jerusalem?
Really, it's a field-specific question. There are a few specific areas, really on the outskirts of a few different spots in the city for like high-tech hubs. But it really depends. People work everywhere in this. If you get up in the morning in Jerusalem, that's from 7 to 9 a.m. Everyone's going in every direction to get to work. So you could work within the communities. There's a lot of work sort of locally with in the Gan or at the local shopping center. Or there's like the big tech hubs. Har Chotzfim is huge. Also there's Malcha has its own tech hub. There are a few malls which employ a lot of people, obviously. Huge medical facilities, a lot of people in the nursing and doctors. But you have everyone working everywhere in every kind of job. So I don't know if there's one answer to that question.
Great. Thank you very much, Yaakov. And many times we look at this whole concept of aliyah as something that we want to do for our children. We want our children to have the benefit of growing up not just in a Jewish community, but we want to offer them what a Jewish society has to offer. And Yisrael, I'd like very much if you could just please address the issue of education, and how do we find the best school for our kids, and what opportunities are there in Jerusalem for the education of our children?
Excellent. That's Eli said an excellent point. When people choose to make aliyah, we don't choose to make aliyah because we're going to be living a more comfortable life in Israel. It's often the reason why we're drawn to make Aliyah is because we're thinking about the Jewish future. We're thinking about our kids. We're thinking what would be the better, what would be the best environment for them to grow up in. So I can tell you about myself. We are blessed, Baruch Hashem, with 6 children. And all of the kids, some of them have finished school already. Some of them are still in school, but they all went to different schools. Part of what I learned about the schools is really my experience of putting kids through school. I just wanted 2 points about schools. The first, general about schools, and the second thing about specific Olim-related schools. You should all know, as you can probably tell, I grew up in London. The schools in London are incredibly different to schools in Israel. When I was a 15-year-old, I had to wear a blazer and a tie and a cap. It's so embarrassing, my gosh. Anyway, the kids in Israel, the whole school environment in Israel is entirely different, certainly from England and possibly from North America as well. Even the role of a school in the life of a child is different. Even the role of a child in society, I think, is probably different. They are far more empowered. Youth movements here in Israel are huge, very much important part of building a child, and they are, have a huge impact, not just on the children. Children have become more independent at a younger age. The schools are part of a different, for me at least, compared to England, a different way of looking at the child. And I think there's part of the culture shock of making Aliyah, understanding that the schools are different here to the way they are in Chutz La'aretz. We have on our phones the phone numbers of all the teachers. You call them in the evenings without any question. Our kids call their teacher once in a while just to, put in their 2 cents on some sort of issue. So one of the things about schools is in Jerusalem, we offer seminars to prepare Olim to understand the school system in Israel. So over this summer, for the many Olim that are going to be coming, and so far we have over 60 Olim kids registered in the school system coming for next year. So those families, just to understand the culture of schools in Israel, really, the children in Israel grow up in a different world, I think, to the world that kids grow up in certainly in England and possibly in North America as well. That's in terms of the education system. Now, in terms of the actual schools, there are a wide variety of schools in Jerusalem. But what's happened really in Jerusalem over the last few years, rather than offering to Olim all of the schools, and there are well over 100 of elementary schools, over 100 high schools, rather than offering all of those schools to all of the Olim, we've chosen schools and built a relationship with about 12 elementary schools and about 12 high schools. And the majority of the Olim go to those particular schools. They are Batei Sefer Koltei Aliyah, schools that welcome Olim. Now, you're welcome, Olim are welcome to send to any school that they wish, but in addition to the services that Olim receive through the education ministry that they will get at any school they choose to go to, and these specific schools, so as I mentioned, it's about 12 elementary schools, about 12 high schools, those particular schools, and of course, the 12 elementary and 12 high school, they cover, some of them are state schools, some are state religious schools, some are state Haredi schools, they, cover the wide spectrum of schools available. And these schools offer facilities paid for by the municipality in addition to that which is provided by the education ministry, which is useful. One final point about schools that I think is important. Yaakov and I work for we work for the Olim department. We have a colleague who works for the municipality in the education department. Her name is Natalie, and together she works very much with these schools, the Koltei Aliyah schools. Together, we are able to register, and many times find the right schools before you come on Aliyah, arrange for an interview via Zoom or some other method for you to communicate with the school prior to your Aliyah, and you can be registered for a school before you land in Israel. Now, I just want to explain, you can be, not, I don't want to guarantee, it doesn't always work out. There are always exceptions to the rule, but we can often organize a perfect match between the school and the family prior to your aliyah, so that you can be registered for school for next year before you land. And indeed, we already have about 60 kids for which we've already done that for this coming September.
Yisrael, I'd just like to add that this is a tremendous service that the Jerusalem municipality offers as the community advisor for the entire country. I can tell you that this service is really not offered in many communities. And by you being able to help Olim register for schools before the families make aliyah, it gives a tremendous sense of calmness and knowing where your family is going to be and what they're going to be doing, where your children are going to be studying for the coming school year. It is a tremendous service for our Olim. I wanted to ask you also, Yisrael, because sometimes there's a little bit of lack of clarity. Some of our Olim are used to sending their children to private schools in North America. And I just wanted to know, what is the tuition like for schools here in Israel?
Oh,
it was a loaded question.
Ellie, thank you so much. If you didn't have a reason to make aliyah until now, so state schools, unbelievably, state schools are free. Isn't that amazing? I mean, the amount that you pay in shekels is a fraction of, I mean, the number in shekels is a fraction of what you would pay in dollars for most schools. Now, some schools, I mean, state schools are free. State religious schools, sometimes they, in addition to what the state provides, there are some schools that provide additional Jewish studies classes. And those additional Jewish studies classes are paid for by the parents, but it's very rare that that amount would be more than about 500 shekel a month, even in high school, meaning it's very rare that you'll be paying more than 500 shekel a month. The only exception are, there are two fantastic schools. I'll just mention briefly, if for kids who are making aliyah in elementary school, so the best is to go to a school that you integrate in an Israeli environment. For high school, once the Bagrut, that is your high school diploma program, starts in 10th grade, it's very, very difficult to integrate into an Israeli environment after 9th or 10th grade, only because you have to learn Hebrew and you're also being academically challenged. You know, this is a time that you're doing important exams, and you haven't got the headspace to focus both on integrating culturally, learning the language, and keeping up with your academic achievements from Chutzlaretz. And therefore, there is one school, YTA in Jerusalem. You may have heard of it. YTA has a boys' school and a girls' school. That's more expensive. But for people who are coming in the higher grades, that could be the easiest way for you to make aliyah. You learn in an English environment, which means you don't need to focus on academic excellence and learning the language at the same time during the higher grades of school.
Thank you very much, Yisrael. At this point in time, I'd like to address some of the questions that were asked in the chat and ahead of our webinar. So there's a question about, are we going to address the cost of housing in different communities in and around Yerushalayim? So instead of talking about different communities, how about addressing how can a person get a feel for what the cost of housing is in different neighborhoods? What tools are there to use? Anybody who would like to take that question?
I can begin. The internet is a great place to start. Most rental options, you're going to find them on the internet. So even from abroad, you could all the same put in all the information you have and see what's being asked for in that neighborhood for the amount of bedrooms you need for the neighborhood itself. the top website that I personally recommend is Yad Shtayim. It's YAD2 .co.il. Google Translate can actually translate all the forms in Hebrew if the Hebrew is still tough for you. And you can put in what you're looking for. All sorts. There's a pretty smart form there that allows you to write the neighborhood, the amount of bedrooms. You could sort it by square meters or price or one of many different fields. And you begin to get a feel. There are also Facebook groups as well if you search that also will give you a good feel for sort of the climate in your neighborhood. Yisrael, do you have anything to add?
I just want to add one thing about neighborhoods. It's not exactly your point. But I think it's still an important point to think about when you're thinking about which apartment you want to rent. And I'm sure you thought about this in the past, but I just want to remind everybody about the difference between quality of life and standard of living. When you think of your home in the outside of Israel, it's certainly possible that it will be larger than the home that you would find here in Israel. And then you look on the internet and you see these apartments and they may seem smaller than what you're used to. I would like to calm you down and tell you that when you live in a community where this is the size of, this is the standard size of an apartment, we often have met. In fact, a couple of weeks ago we had a family that made Aliyah to a different city in Israel last summer, and unfortunately they lived in a much bigger home in that city, and they left that city and chose to come to Jerusalem. They're actually moving to Armot, to East Talpiot, that's Talpiot Mizrach, in South Jerusalem. And part of the reason for that choice is because when you compare the quality of life to the standard of living, when you live in an environment, this is where everybody lives in homes like this. It's you're not comparing. You shouldn't compare your home in Jerusalem to your home now. You should compare your home in Jerusalem to the other homes in the neighborhood. And if there are people who are similar to you who live in other homes in that neighborhood, then it's most likely that you'll find yourselves to be very happy there as well. It's a very difficult decision because you can't put your head in Israel yet because you're still in America. But I just want to or in North America, I just want to tell you what you should be aware of, this important factor in making your decision about where to live. You're entering a different world, and the quality of life here is something different, and the size of your home is less relevant in that decision.
Thank you very much, Yisrael. I'd like to address another question that we have on the chat, and that's regarding education. And it's very interesting because, as a parent, I know that every child has different needs. And the question is, on the one hand, what educational opportunities are there for children who are gifted in Jerusalem, on the one hand, and on the other hand, for children who have special learning needs, what opportunities are available for them?
Well, for gifted children, first of all, many of the schools offer different tracks. Certainly, once you get to 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, different schools offer different tracks. There are some schools that are more academic and some schools that are less academic. Gifted children are often pushed to go to the more academic schools. Chorev is a very well-known school that's, for a high level of academia. Machon Lev is a very, very impressive boys' school where you stay for an extra year after 12th grade and you complete with an academic degree. Also for gifted, that's for gifted boys. Chorev is both for boys and for girls. There are schools that focus on the sciences. There are schools that focus on the arts. When you do the Bagrut at the end of 12th grade, there are different levels of Bagrut. And we guide parents to the school that focuses on, where the largest group of students are the one doing the level of Bagrut that's appropriate for their children. So in math, there are 3 levels. So you'd want to send, if a gifted kid, you want to send that kid to a school where the majority are doing the highest level of math, in the assuming that if they're doing a high level, that's going to be a top school. So we have in our 12 schools in each side, there are a wide variety. That's in terms of gifted children. For little kids, there are also chugim, after school clubs are a very popular thing that some parents use to, to supplement the education they get in school. In terms of if for kids that need special needs, so for special needs, I have to say that Jerusalem is also an excellent resource. And if we were talking previously about registering for schools beforehand, children with special needs do one extra stage prior to joining school. They do a va'adat hasama. A va'adat hasama is a placement committee. And remarkably, even the va'adat hasama, you can email evaluations and other important documentation to our office in Jerusalem. And it's not always possible, but it's often possible that we're able to represent you at the Va'adat Hasama to have your children integrated into special education networks.
Is there a time frame for any of this for the Va'adat Hasama?
Yeah, so these things are all very, very early. Very early. Most of the most of these va'adot, most of the documentation is presented really January to early February of the year prior to the next school year. So for many olim, it's difficult to to keep to the timetable that Israelis keep up to. If an Israeli parent will know in January or February where they want their kid to go to next year, for olim it's more difficult. However, in addition to the regular scheduled va'adot hasama, placement committees, there are also additional, throughout the summer, there are additional placement committees. And if you have not submitted your paperwork in time for the deadlines of January, February, there's always possibilities later on in the year to do it. At the moment, right now, I'm working on collecting the paperwork for a family who will submit the paperwork, and hopefully they'll be able to have the va'adah prior to their aliyah in August.
That's a tremendous service. Thank you very much, Yisrael, for that information. Yaakov, I'd like to ask you, you had mentioned before when you talked about employment, some of the differences culturally between the job place in North America and in Israel. Could you give some examples of what you mean by that?
Sure. Where to begin almost. It's like everything, things are different here. And something Yisrael mentioned in terms of the housing market, it really serves you well to sort of compare it to how things work vis-a-vis the surrounding than how they compare it to wherever you're coming from in North America. And as you realize, even within the same country, often things are so different. Now it's a whole new country, it's a whole new culture. One of the stereotypes, which again, it won't be true for everyone, that it's stereotype comes from somewhere. The timeliness culture, it's a little bit different. I grew up under the assumption if you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. In Israel, if you're on time, you're early. You're often going to be on time and be the one waiting a few minutes. Very often I find myself texting like on the way over, maybe I'm going to be a few minutes late. Turns out I'm not that late and I'm waiting. Anyway, that's just one of the stereotypes that's often true. The dress culture, it's a little bit more dressed down. Sandals are there's a little bit of a desert culture here. Sandals are acceptable in most work environments. People generally are often not in uniform doing what they do. It's a little bit less outwardly obvious what that person's profession is based on what they're wearing sometimes. That's another thing that's majorly true. Things are a little more informal also. Everywhere in the world, connections are important. I'd say in Israel, knowing someone in your field is such a valuable tool. If you don't know someone in your field yet, try to meet some people in your field. They'll be your best friends at some point. If not, they'll introduce you to your new best friends.
So just to add to what you mentioned, one of the things that I'd also like to relate is that I feel that at times there are greater opportunities for upward mobility in the workplace because the workplace is less formal. And therefore, based on your abilities, you have the opportunity to shine a lot sooner than you may have had in a corporate structure in North America.
100%. It's consistent with the theme of the personal connection really prevails a lot here. So once you're there, once you're in the position to get noticed, that good relationship with it, whether it's your boss, your manager, your friend, your neighbor, that personal good connection will move you along as much as anything.
And how important is Hebrew?
It's a great question. I have two answers that are they're both true. One is it's supremely important. It's the language of the land. The majority of the best opportunities are presented in Hebrew. Nothing replaces speaking the language of the land you're in. That being said, not speaking Hebrew, that's not a good excuse for not looking for a job, in the sense that there's a lot to do until you learn Hebrew. There are English speaking opportunities. English, in fact, is a little bit of an asset here. In a lot of ways, it's your relative advantage to the market. Because in certain places, certain career paths, English is going to be very, very important. But I encourage only not to rely on the fact that they could get by with their English, to sort of use the employment even as an opportunity to learn more Hebrew. That means often taking a lower level job in your field of interest, professionally lower level that is, in order to sort of work your way up. As you said, sometimes the informal structure allows you to shoot up a little faster here. So if you get in on what you're interested in and you're able to function in an environment that's a little bit over your head with the Hebrew, but maybe a little bit below your skill level in terms of the technical skill being used, and that's just your sort of ticket into the Israeli job market, into the game. But definitely learning Hebrew is a process that I recommend embracing it and looking for the opportunities to sort of improve it.
Thank you very much, Yaakov. One last question, and that is, how important is it to know how I identify religiously when looking for schools for my children?
That is such an excellent question. That is a brilliant question. The school I went to in England was catered to a very wide demographic, and here in Israel that's less common. Not that it doesn't exist at all, but there's sort of a privilege, I suppose, because there's a larger Jewish community, so each smaller demographic can provide schools for that particular demographic. Now, however, it's not. So therefore, the result of that is therefore that you have schools for, there's for people whose level of observance is like this, and then people whose level of observance is like that. However, I would say something remarkable has happened in the last couple of years. I've been involved, I suppose, in the school system here for about 15 years, since our first kids started, but more actively in the last 3 years, being quite involved in the school system here. And I've been surprised and impressed by the impact the North American Olim have had on the education system here in Israel. There are North American Olim that have come to Israel and that have really made a huge impact in opening up new schools and bringing direction. So sometimes what's very impressive is that there's an opportunity to have an impact on the education system here in Israel. So whilst it may be true that there's a wide variety of schools that serve a very wide demographic here, and you might have a school in America that serves a wide demographic, and here in Israel there'll be 3 different schools for each part of that one school in America, and that maybe that some people might like, that might be good for some of you. For those of you who are not happy with that, it's remarkable the impact that North Americans have had on the school system here. The school that I mentioned earlier in French Hill, Be'er is the name of the school. The head teacher spent many years as a shlicha. She was for the Jewish agency. She spent many years outside of Israel, and she's bringing that experience to impact the school system here in Israel. One of the largest schools that's Kolet Aliyah, that takes in Olim, has an American principal. Chorev Elementary School is the head teacher of the school is from North America. So whilst there is a wider variety, the Americans who come to Israel have changed it for the better. And it's if you know, when you come as a tourist to Israel, so you come as a customer, but when you come to make Aliyah, so that you come as a partner in Israel, and not wanting to put too much pressure on you here. When you come to Israel, you have the opportunity to really have an impact in a way that you would surprise yourself. And I've seen it happen. New schools have opened up that have been more open than other schools in the past, and it's changing the scene in Jerusalem only for the better.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, our time is short, and I just wanted to take the opportunity to invite all those participants in the webinar that if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. My name again is Eli Bialik, and please feel free to reach out to Yisrael Cohn or to Yaakov Berger. We very much want to help you with your questions, with your learning process, with your research, because we firmly believe that living in Jerusalem is an incredible opportunity, and we wish you tremendous hatzlacha on your Aliyah journey. Now, what I'd like to say at this time is that if you have not yet had the opportunity to submit an Aliyah application, and you are thinking about making Aliyah within the next 12 months, now would be the time to go on to the Nefesh B'Nefesh website, nbn.org.il. On the upper right-hand side, there's a menu item that says Apply. You fill out the online Aliyah application, and then we'll be able to assist you with your next steps. So if you haven't yet done that and you're looking to make Aliyah, now is the time to apply if your time frame is within the next year. I just wanted to ask Yisrael and Yaakov if you have any last remarks, because I've so much enjoyed this webinar with you, and please share.
I just want to say it was a real pleasure to speak to all of you. I find it a little bit disconcerting because although there are many people here, we don't have the honor of seeing any of you. Could you please email Yaakov or myself? We'll be more than happy to answer your questions. And if ever we bump into you on the streets of Jerusalem, will you say hello? Because we can't say hello to you because we haven't seen you. But we look forward to seeing you, Be'ezrat Hashem, here in Jerusalem.
And just echoing what Yisrael said, looking forward to seeing you on the other side, and we're available for personal consultations. Please feel free to reach out and embrace it. It's a big decision, it's a lot of transitions. If you embrace all of it at once together as just like this is Israel, as opposed to trying to compare every component to other components elsewhere in life, it really helps if you're able to just sort of immerse in it. So I bless you all to do just that.
Thank you very much. B'hatzlacha lekulam. Laila tov.